And therefore, people have to be creative in how they sort of prototype and test ideas in order to get people behind them. And so I think the idea when you work with constraints, and I talked to a lot of people that I interviewed in the book who felt this way, which is constraints force you to think of alternative uses.
Welcome to Season 5 of the podcast, Manage Self, Lead Others with host Nina Sunday. This season, we go deeper into innovation, creativity, AI, and the invisible patterns shaping workplace culture. The future of leadership starts with the questions we ask. Join us to explore how to lead with emotional intelligence to elevate team culture and stay future ready.
My guest today is Leslie Grandy, author, speaker, and CEO advisor who helps organizations spark creativity and stay ahead in a fast-changing world. Over her 25-plus year career, she's held senior roles with Apple, Amazon, T-Mobile, Starbucks, and other iconic brands, leading teams behind some of the earliest digital media and streaming innovations. Her new book, Creative Velocity, shows how leaders can unlock imagination, speed up innovation, and turn ideas into impact. She also teaches product leadership at the University of Washington's Foster School of Business. Welcome, Leslie Grandy. And
thank you so much.
I'm excited because we are featuring an innovation and creativity stream this series, Series 5. And I believe that your episode is going to be one of the top episodes, popular episodes, because you've published this book recently, Creative Velocity, and two of my favourite words, and assume that the manager is considers themselves creative and they want to embed innovation in their processes, and they're faced with team members that say, oh, but I'm not creative. I don't come up with ideas. How can a manager handle that?
I think so. Yes, that is probably the biggest concern that you have as a leader, is that your team is thinking big and bold and really making sure that the impact range, right, that the team has is as meaningful and valuable to the company as it could be. I definitely see that as big. I would say, though, that a little bit bigger is whether organizations even know or encourage creative leadership. Because sometimes you may be individually a creative leader, but you're working in a culture that's risk averse or has a fear of failure. And so it's hard for you to push creative velocity into that type of environment. So while I think you definitely have seen the reality of a manager trying to inspire a team as being a very real and present problem for people, I've also experienced being someone who actually believes in their skills, being in an environment that silos creative functions and doesn't believe in the creative capacity of operations people or finance people or the legal department, and therefore leaves them out of those discussions where often business model innovation occurs, or the opportunity to create something as a customer experience.
So it's more urgent than ever in the world of AI, because we're going to see tremendous change in the next few years specifically. So how important is it that the whole organisation is embedding innovation and not just siloing it, as you mentioned?
I think the key is recognizing that AI isn't just a tool or technology that you deploy, but it is a team member that can actually enhance and inspire the existing employees to build more resilient plans or imagine a different future. And AI can actually bring it, the pattern recognition and the expansive view of the world and other domains and how things are done into a conversation very quickly without slowing people down and raising the learnings from those other innovations or other ways of working that can be immediately brought to bear in the current circumstance. And that's not specific to a product person or a marketing person, right? That's anybody who could look at how's this done in other industries? What are the models that exist for us to innovate that we could pull from someplace else?
Absolutely. So let's let's take the bull by the horns. Define creative velocity.
Well, to me, the important part of the combination of the two words is the fact that you can trigger this ability to quickly and efficiently originate ideas and innovations, but the velocity only comes with that human capacity to identify what's meaningful and valuable. Because anybody can come up with wild ideas, and AI has no shortage of those. But the capacity to actually do it in a way that leads to meaning and value and purpose for a customer or an audience, or even just your employees, right? Something that actually advances their capacity to create. That's what's really important in the fabric of creative velocity. It has to be meaningful and valuable, not just speedy.
Right. Absolutely. And they need to apply critical thinking to every suggestion, every
Absolutely.
output of AI and every output
Absolutely.
of individuals. Because I've been in innovation panels where I observed that one person had one idea that they were really pushing, and they were sort of, it wasn't really being taken up by the other members of the panel, but just wouldn't let it go. And also in my head, I thought, well, it sounds like high effort, low impact. You don't want something that just because it's your idea, if it's a lot of effort for a low payoff, well, maybe that doesn't have the higher priority of other things that are low effort, high payoff.
Absolutely. And it's also who cares? Who does it resonate with? And that's really difficult for AI to assess. They
Yeah.
can make some assertions, but in terms of lived experience, why something might resonate with you if you're a parent or if you've lost a child, or right, things might resonate differently with you. And as the gatekeeper of the human experience of people interacting with your product or service or business, you have to make sure that what you're putting out as a novel idea is in fact supporting and resonating and servicing the right audience.
Well, that would suggest then that if you treat AI as another assistant, you could be asking questions like, I've got this idea. This is what I think are the benefits, but what's my blind spot around what might be the
Absolutely.
unintended consequences?
100%. This is my favorite thing about AI is it's not married to your idea. And
Yes,
so it has such psychological distance from it that it's going to bring those back. And then it's up to you to decide, right, what to process and synthesize or what to ignore. But that idea that emergent behaviors would be a blind spot is very real in innovation. You think you're going to deliver this, but the ripple effect afterwards is unintended, and therefore you're not prepared to either leverage it or contain it. And so I love that you use that example, because I think that's where AI shines as a partner, which is telling you all the things that could happen, and it's up to you to determine which ones you want to plan contingencies for.
exactly. Now, you do talk about creative confidence, which you call creative self-efficacy. And I think a lot of humans lose it even before they get to high school. They get
Totally.
either feedback from their parents, focus on maths and don't focus on art or music, or lack of positive feedback from teachers or where the curriculum goes. So, how can we, in a world where children lose their creative self confidence as they move through the education system, many of them, how can we bring that back when they're already working in the workplace?
That's so awesome, because I do think that's been my experience personally, that I was one of the people you described, but that also I've managed people who I've had to hold a mirror up to and say, you are creative. You're just seeing somebody in yourself that you haven't activated, right? You're not activating that person that could actually be a creative thinker. And the way you do that is practice. To think about the act of being creative as something you could practice is, I think, a new idea for a lot of people, that you can do things to build your creative capacity, which then builds your creative confidence. I think from my perspective, just my own personal version of this was, I think that figuring stuff out is fun. Whether it's I used to figure out my stereo system with my dad and how to hook it up and how did it work and what all the pieces did and why. Like that stuff from as long as I can remember was important, but I didn't deem it as creative. But as
Right.
I've gotten older, I've recognized that the capacity to figure things out really is about creativity applied
Yes.
to circumstances that don't have answers necessarily, right? Where you're trying to imagine how this could be. And as soon as you start using imagine how this could be in that language, you kind of start to realize it is accessing your creative capacity to go figure things out. And so a lot of what I worked on as a leader when I worked at companies was trying to get and encourage people in that mindset that if I don't know, I can figure it out. And people give up easy. They get frustrated. And part of
Yes.
the reason is they don't know how to go figure it out. And so with the book and with the workshops I lead, I give people frameworks because those are always the best way to train yourself. And then if you have these frameworks, you can lean in, right, to test your capacity to think imaginatively and inventively.
Well, that's fabulous, Leslie. And I'm curious to know what's a framework that you've had great success with getting people in the organization to use.
Well, as I do my workshops, the one that seems to surprise people the most because it's so immediately applicable is a technique called the generic parts technique.
Yes.
And the first chapter of the book talks about the MacGyver mindset. And if
Yes.
anybody remembers that show, MacGyver was the person who could figure anything out from what he had on hand. He had constraints with what tools he had. He was in some sort of bind, and
He could
he
use
would
red light to charge a battery.
right or just a number of things. There's a video clip of even the reboot MacGyver where he figures out how to use a biometric handprint by creating some fake hand with graphite and some other things, and it's the idea that you can improvise. And
Yes,
improvisation to
that's right.
solve problems is a fantastic creative skill. And the way it works is you got to know all the most generic functions you need in order to assemble something that can suit them. And so that's what he would do is he would find what he had on hand and he would understand what it does, what it has, what its ingredients were, what it could service as a function, and it would all of a sudden recombine into a new solution. And
So
that's the most commonplace version of something that people can use immediately.
I did focus in on your reference to embracing constraints. And just to give you some context, I'm a big fan of Eli Goldratt, who wrote the book Theory of, well, it's the theory of constraints. It's called The Goal. And that theory of constraints is taught in business schools around the world. So tell us how embracing constraints can really help with creativity.
That's so funny. Amazon, my manager at Amazon told me about that book. So I read that book at the recommendation of Amazon because Amazon loves to work in a very lean manner. And so constraints are sort of considered, normal. And therefore, people have to be creative in how they sort of prototype and test ideas in order to get people behind them. And so I think the idea when you work with constraints, and I talked to a lot of people that I interviewed in the book who felt this way, which is constraints force you to think of alternative uses. They force you to think of the way that resources could be reapplied. They teach you to think about leverage. What can I leverage that someone's already doing so I don't have to build it again?
Well, of course, Goldratt was saying in about constraints is what you can do to create innovation is to identify your biggest constraint and put a lot of energy into resolving that, because once you resolve your biggest constraint, the 80-20 rule kicks in. And fixing a top 20% problem can actually have an 80% ripple effect. If you know anything about Richard Koch's book on 80-20 rule and Pareto that invented it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the only thing about the only sort of caveat I would add to that is a lot of times I hear team members think their constraint is time, money, and resources, and that's everybody's constraint. So it's really hard for sometimes people to really see the constraint as a fuel. And the people that tend to do that are really the people who are more likely to be inventive and improvise and leverage. And so that's why I think that constraints spawn creativity.
I have a personal motto, if you like, or mantra, which is always look for the second right answer, because the first right answer will pop in people's heads. And I notice people just go with the first idea they get. I
Yeah,
go, well, hang on. If you do an actual creative brainstorm and do a list of 1 to 20 and force yourself to come up with 20 ideas, often the more creative ideas around 18, 19, 20, I have found. Well, we have only got a few minutes left, Leslie. This is a fascinating conversation. I do want to touch on expert bias. Can you tell us about that,
absolutely.
please? Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a really big corporate Achilles heel. I think that companies, especially with long tenured employees, uh, can easily intimidate or squash the capacity of new voices to hear or affect change. The idea that if you're in a company that's trying to go through a transformation, but most of your employees have been there for more than a decade, the gravitational pull is going to be towards leveraging their expertise,
Right.
when what might actually have to happen is those new people that have been brought in need to have an outsized weight on people's thinking because the world has changed in the last decade. And I think when those people tend to get questioned, well, maybe that's how it was, but let's look forward and see how it could be. There's not a lot of enthusiasm in environments like that for people to look forward at the green field that's ahead, that's been changed, rather than look at how we've always done it. And I think that's the real risk in especially older companies, older businesses, and those with long tenured employees in industries that really are slow to change. Maybe it's insurance and maybe it's finance, but also, it could be oil. It could be energy companies that are of the, older school of energy companies, or it could be retailers that have been in retail for decades. If it's how it's worked and you're still alive, it's hard to let go of it.
Yeah, because if you're a senior leader, what you've been doing got you to where you are, but that we're now facing a situation in the entire world where to where you want to go, you can't rely on what you used to do. So you
Absolutely.
talk about narrow thinking and cognitive fixedness. So can you elaborate on that idea? It reminds me of fixed and growth mindset too.
Yeah, the fixedness is usually around functionality and how things work, and that
Right.
that bias to how it's been done, how it works, status quo, is actually prevalent again in this kind of environment that we're talking about, where long tenured employees or a company that's been around for a while and maybe seeing the competitive landscape change, but has been successful up to that point and is struggling with how to respond. Now all of a sudden you go from being a market leader to a reactor, and you're sitting there, reacting to how the status quo is now redefined, as opposed to being the people that redefine what the new world order should be, what the
Yeah.
new world should be, and what your role is in it. And so in that scenario, that's when people, I think, get stuck in how much change they can take. A lot of times you'll find to make that real disruptive move from as is to be and what you could become in the new world just requires too many things for people to accept have to change. And so they kind of maybe make a couple of degrees of turn, and to try to feel okay about that, maybe they'll then do it again. But by then, everybody else who's new to the market, has gone and leapt ahead with none of those rules.
Yeah.
So I think it changes your overall capacity to be perceived as a market leader if you're looking at that expertise to drive your business forward and
Well,
not be willing to open up.
I thank you for putting your ideas to paper or to Kindle and getting this or audiobook perhaps, and getting this out into the world. Now, if a company wanted to work with you, Are you a speaker? Are you a consultant? Do you work with teams?
Yes.
Do you do training? Tell us what you do and where you
Absolutely.
do it.
I do keynote speaking. I do corporate workshops. I run an online course with Maven.com that teaches people on to build that self-confidence by understanding the various frameworks that are available to them. So I'll go work for a couple of days with a company in a particular field to get them on course to see these techniques as a way to really revive that inspiration and innovation within the employee ranks.
And you're based in Seattle, USA.
Correct.
How far afield do you travel to
Well,
work with people?
where if it's the right opportunity, I love Australia. By the way, I've been to Brisbane, and I love Australia. My husband and I spent some time there, and going
Oh,
to
lovely.
Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane. Yes, I
Yeah.
think the real important thing is that people want to elevate their teams and their organizations to be a place where there's no fear with AI, and that AI is actually the fuel to bring that innovation and inventive spirit to life.
And we'll put your links in the show notes. But your course, you said it's at Maven. Is that Maven?
Yes, it is. It's a learning platform
Yeah.
based out of Silicon Valley.
It's maven.com, and the name of your course, it'd be among a list of other courses, not just your own. So how would they
Right.
find it? What's it called?
Yeah, it's they would just search on my name. So my
Yeah,
courses
okay.
will come up under my name. I
Lovely.
have one free course that I teach on that platform that people can see
Oh,
asynchronously on the premeditation of evils and premortems as a way to solidify plans and make reduce risk. So
right.
there's that class that's free, and then the other one is delivering breakthrough ideas with creative frameworks and AI.
Lovely. Well, everybody go have a listen and participate in rewiring your brain through creative velocity.
Thank
Well,
you. Thanks,
I
Tina.
look forward to having a coffee with you in person when you come to Brisbane.
You can count on it.
Thank you so much, Leslie
Thank
Grandy. It's
you.
been a true pleasure. Thank you. Today's guest was the wonderful Leslie Grandy, and we're talking about ideas in her book, Creative Velocity. She has a course on maven.com, so just search her name and that will come up, and there's a discount code in the show notes, so check that out. You can head over to Amazon for her book, Creative Velocity. My name is Nina Sunday, and this is the Manage Self Lead Others podcast. Stay tuned. We have more conversations coming down the pipeline. In YouTube, make sure you subscribe, because that way as soon as an episode is published, you'll have access to listen or watch it. Until next time, bye for now.
Manage Self Lead Others has launched the book. It's available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. Not just a collection of transcripts, Nina Sunday adds her own reflections about each guest conversation. Plus, you might like to join Nina on her Substack channel, ninasunday.substack.com, for candid, behind-the-scenes conversations with two sharp AI hosts who riff, question, and bounce around ideas sparked by the published podcast episode. And if you're looking for a conference speaker or workshop facilitator who can up-level your team in Australia or around the world, visit brainpowertraining.com.au or ninasunday.com. Until you tune in next time.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.